What happened in Sweida over the last 3 weeks is complicated. There's no nuance, though, for 22-year-old Rita. She survived the massacre of her Druze family and is certain it was at the hands of government soldiers. Rita is the only survivor. The Syrian Ministry of Defense declined to comment, so we only have her voice. She lay motionless in this room overnight, shot in the legs, surrounded by the bodies of her loved ones.
فكرت حالي متت ما بعرف كيف بيموت الإنسان.
We also spent time with the Druze militia who resisted the government's attempt to secure Sweida. They don't do nuance either. But we discovered that there is in reality plenty of ambiguity here. Could those people leave if they wanted to leave?
عكس يطلعوا هن على مسؤوليتهم يطلعوا شخصيا ما عندنا مشكلة.
On the 14th of July, Syria's new president, Ahmed al-Shara, sent Sunni troops into the majority Druze area of Sweida. Many once belonged to the Islamist fighting groups who toppled Assad. The stated aim in Sweida put a stop to the violence that had erupted between Sunni Bedouin tribes and Druze fighters. But we have documented multiple accounts of sectarian massacres by Syrian government forces. There are also accounts of atrocities by Druze fighters, but when it comes to civilian deaths, it was the Druze who bore the brunt of the horror. And nowhere was that horror more vivid than what happened in this building on the evening of the 16th of July. 12 people were murdered here. Their relatives are cleaning up the blood and the bullets. There are other things to do also. Check your brother's clothes for small things and familiar smells. And you need to hold your living loved ones close. That is what relatives are doing for the young university student who survived the mass killing. Her uncle is bringing us to meet her. We travelled through the streets of Sweida, past the queues for food, the fraught wait for limited fuel, and then to the relative's house, where Rita is being cared for. She agreed to be interviewed, but is too afraid to have her face shown on camera. She recounts what happened that night back at her grandfather's house, when they opened the door to 3 soldiers.
بس فاتوا صاروا يضربوا خالتي بالبارودة على ظهره.
She says the soldiers who came into the house wore military uniforms, spoke with an Idlib accent. In other words, weren't Bedouin fighters, they were government-aligned forces.
صاروا يفتشونا نحنا ما معنا سلاح. بابا ما بيحب السلاح.
But not finding evidence of Druze militancy wasn't enough for these soldiers. Just being Druze and not being their kind of Muslim was.
سألنا نحنا بس هيك أنا كنت يعني بهيك هالترتيبها فهني قال هذا مو لبس مو شي بنلبس هني يمكن كانوا عم بيسألوا عن بدهم الحجاب بس صاروا يضحكوا ويقولوا نحنا السنة جيناكن. أنا أول ما فت على الغرفة شفته مكتوب على الحيط أول الباب هيك لا إله إلا الله.
They put the men in one room and the women in another. Then they opened fire. Rita's grandmother was in front of her. She was killed along with Rita's mother, 2 brothers, father, grandfather. 6 other relatives also died. Rita witnessed what happened and how the soldiers saw it as sport.
بس صاروا يعطوا لبعضهم يضحكوا بس يشوفونا كيف ميتين.
After the killing spree, Rita heard the soldiers move to the kitchen.
سكروا الباب وطلعوا صاروا ياكلوا برا سمعت صوت ناس بياكلوا.
This is a family photo taken by Rita recently. The men having dinner in the room next door had just killed every person you can see in this picture and one other. Rita spent that night in the room with the bodies of her family, too afraid to move and bleeding from her gunshot wounds. She didn't know it at the time, but hours later, while she was still lying there, government soldiers started withdrawing from her neighborhood and from Sweida. Prompted by Israeli military interventions in support of the Druze and an agreement between Damascus and some of the Druze factions. In the morning, she decided to move, heard neighbors shouting out in the street.
الصبح سمعت صوت ناس عم تصيح من أهل سويدا كانوا بيقولوا إنه في حدا بالحارة بعد طلعوا هن قاتلين كل حارة.
Rita slowly made her way out of the building. These are her footprints. Her trust in the new Syrian state left for dead in the rooms behind her, along with those she loved.
كيف بدي أعيش مع أشخاص مثلي مثلن بس هني ما بيهمن غير طائفتن. احنا كنا بأرضنا احنا كنا ببيتنا. احنا ما كنا عم نقاتل حدا. بابا ما كان عم بيقاتل حدا. بابا ما كان عم بيقاتل حدا.
These men are fighting. The Knights of Hamza are a Druze militia group of about 50 fighters. They've commandeered a hotel in Sweida, comes complete with a wedding venue, and inside several Sunni families. The militia say they're holding them for their own protection, with sectarian tension running so high in Sweida. But the line between refuge and detention is blurred. When not leading a Druze militia, the commander, Yaman Sair, runs a car dealership. Could those people leave if they wanted to leave?
عكس يطلعوا هن مسؤوليتهم يطلعوا شخصيا ما عندنا مشكلة.
The day after, these Sunni families were handed over to the Syrian Arab Red Crescent as part of an exchange for Druze hostages. We also have other questions for the commander. Where did you get the money to buy all these guns?
هلا ما اشترينا السلاح. أنا السلاح اللي كان بسويدا ظل بسويدا. سلاح القطع العسكرية اللي كان بسويدا ظل بسويدا.
What about direct support from the Israeli state?
أما لا دعم خارجي، لا تمويل خارجي، لا شيء. كله من تعبنا ومن حرمالنا.
And then to reports that Druze militia committed atrocities against Sweida's Sunni population.
ليش نحن ارتكبنا فيهم جرائم؟ شو السبب؟ طب حلو ارتكبنا فيهم جرائم مو هيك الصيطة والعيطة انه نحن ارتكبنا فيهم جرائم. طب ليش عدور النظام الجديد عدور التحرير وجاهز نرتكب فيه جرائم؟ طب ليش قبل النظام قبل التحرير ما قدرنا نرتكب فيه جرائم؟ هز السؤال ليش؟ شو السبب؟
There's a complicated ecosystem of Druze militia in Sweida, but the events of the last 3 weeks have meant more and more align with the controversial Druze sheikh Hikmat al-Hajri, including this one. In other words, what's happened in Sweida has supercharged anti-Damascus militancy. The commander then insisted we interview this 18-year-old government-aligned fighter who they'd taken prisoner during the fighting. Interviewing POWs under duress is highly problematic, so we've decided not to broadcast it. But his captors had gone through his phone and found this video. It's filmed by the 18-year-old himself, his face covered, and shows him with others en route to Sweida. They make clear what they're intending to do: humiliate and kill Druze. We understand that this fighter is with a Turkish-backed militia, the SNA, which is now formally part of the Syrian army. The date is also significant. It was filmed on the 18th of July, after government forces were ordered to withdraw from Sweida. The group he's with didn't get those orders, or didn't listen to them, or knew they could afford to ignore them.
شو بدي واجه؟ طب دولتي ما حمتني بشو بدي بحمي حالي يعني بدي احمي بيتي بدي احمي عرضي بدي احمي اولادي. ودم سوريا حرام بالنهاية. ما خلوا فيها حرام.
What happened in Sweida could alter Syria's future in a profound way. Other groups will have watched and learned from the government's failed attempt to establish control here. It has forever changed Rita's path forward. Her family gone, and the dream of a new Syria betrayed.
خسرت أهلي ما ظل شيء حتى بيوت ما ظل عندنا حتى بيتي ما ظل أنا إذا بدي أرجع ما في شيء من ريحتهم ما ظل عندي شيء أنا بدي فل من سوريا.
The Syrian Ministry of Defense didn't answer our questions about Rita's story, but last week they did say that men, quote, in military fatigues had committed violations in Sweida and that they would investigate. Now, that's pretty much exactly what they said back in March. Off the back of a general mobilization, troops went into the coast, and off the back of that, hundreds of Alawite civilians were killed. Look, Ahmed al-Shar, the new president, has a problem here. He's trying to integrate fighting factions into a new, professionally trained army, and that is difficult. The big question for him, though, is this: how serious is he about doing that?
Parag, thanks very much for your reporting there.